I am here with Steve Nurse. He is engineer, author, and bent rider, and we are down in Melbourne, Australia to visit Steve. Steve, how are you today?
Very well. I don't think you could quite visit us today because of coronavirus, but we're communicating virtually, and that's what counts.
Virtual visits is what we do on the Laid Back Bike Report. So, welcome to the
Yeah.
show, Steve. And let's start out, if we could, with an introduction. Could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and the intersection of your life and recumbent bikes?
I've been an engineer for all my life. That's been my profession, and I'm nearing retirement age, and really only working intermittently now. But I still do a lot of work on recumbent bikes. I started building recumbents in about 1987, and I was in Germany at the time. And it took me a long time to get anything useful, but after about 10 years, I had something that I could ride about 200 kilometres. And I've kept on with my own home builds and just developed them since then. And I've had a proper engineering career, mainly in electric motors, but also pumps, printing machines, rotomolding, all sorts of things. More recently, it's been my career. I've had jobs in researching recumbent bikes. So, yeah, it's been good.
All right, Steve, great. And as I mentioned earlier, you are also an author, and I think we're going to focus your presentation around your book, but you have a number of things to talk about here. You mentioned motors, something that you worked on earlier, and I think that's where we're going to kick it off.
Yeah, so this is one of the motors I was involved with. This motor is about the size of a loaf of bread, but I worked on a lot of aspects on this particular motor. I designed the plastic box on the top and the rubber resilient mount, and then the base of it is laser cut. So I did a 2D drawing for that. So generally, I know my way around these things reasonably well. I mentioned being involved with bikes, so this is my sort of bike engineering background. That these books were around at the time when I was starting to build bikes more seriously. From about 1994 to 2003, all these were out. And the next slide shows just one particular bike, which is a Bevo bike. And I would see these books so often that they would sort of get stuck in my imagination. And this bike's front wheel drive, but it's also direct drive. There's no pulley on the drive side between the crank and the wheel. And quite a bit later on, if we go to the next slide, I sort of worked out for a lot of bikes what the stresses in the frame might be because of the chain. And I've done this sort of diagram for quite a few bikes. This is one of the bikes that I built sort of probably about 10 years ago. One I would have done 200K rides on. And, I'm just sort of starting to establish a sort of a template for things that I built. It's front wheel drive, and you'll see that my knees are up in between the parts of the steering, and so you can't turn a lot when you're pedaling. And if you did turn a lot, the chain would come off. So a lot of my building's been complemented by doing racing with recumbents and then just social riding. So this is on the trikes, on the recumbents are Alan Ball and Robert Werizak, my friend, and like this is just interesting. It's at a Tweed, right? And there's sort of ancient history of trikes and bikes and modern history, and it's all there in the one photo. So the Bevo bike was one of my influences of recumbents, and Vi Vuong, who's from the US, from California, he's another one of my influences, and he made a lot of these sort of Python trikes, but he's not really interested in refinement, and so he makes things that he just drives around and he films them, and he gets, I think some of his videos gets hits in the millions, or very, very many. So he's got very interesting ideas, but he never takes them terribly far. And this video sort of got under my skin as well, and I wanted to build something like what he does. These are the first set of wheels that I made that would suit a leaning trike that works on the principle of one of Vi Vuong's trikes. I'm an engineer, and this was put together in a very random way, and you can get pedal shafts. The wheels aren't the same as each other, and it's sort of just a bit of an engineering mess. And you couldn't do it in production because it's, but I've got with me here my design solution for that, and I got about 30 or 40 of these made. Once you're set up to make something like this with an NC, you can just go for it. And the last ones cost very little more than the first one. So I'm still using these. I'm almost running out, but I use these with through axle 16 and 20-inch wheels, which you can get. So my very first experiment making a Vuong trike was like this, and you can see what the frame of the trike is. It's sort of just a plank of wood, and there's not that much more sophisticated about it. You drill a few holes in it, and then you also need steel or other reinforcements where the bearings are, so the things don't rip apart. The box is a combined seat and tail box, and it's aerodynamic and it carries luggage, and I still use virtually exactly the same thing today, slightly more refined. This is my shop where I'm doing some of the building. So I've got a shed where I keep all my parts, but it's can't take things like this in it. So all my buildings outside, I've got a few verandas and stuff I can put things under so that when it rains, things don't get wet. That's actually riding the first trike, that trike, which was all in process. And it was quite surprising that it worked as well as it did. It worked almost straight away. This trike's got long axles holding up the back wheels, and I've made them a lot shorter on trikes that I use these days, but you can just buy unicycle cranks off the shelf and you just use it. Over several years I've refined things, and so I actually got a chance to study and do work on this sort of trike as an industrial design master's degree. So that was sort of almost full-time designing trikes, and so this is sort of like the end product. Yeah, so I didn't stop with that trike. It wasn't enough that I just got it working. I had to sort of had an itch to scratch, and I wanted to make that better. And so about maybe 5 or 6 years later, this is a more refined product. It's made out of timber again, and this whole thing is made from NC routed 4mm plywood. And you can see there's a white core flute panel there, but but you can swap that out, and you can have cloth material, so you can make it sort of look whatever you like, or you can have timber, so it's all timber. When I got it sort of refined to this level, I put it up on the Thingiverse website. So there are plans for that, and for free, and you can build it if you're motivated and you have enough equipment, or if your friends have got enough equipment. And then alongside the development of this timber version, I also did an aluminium frame version, which honestly, I've ridden the aluminium one quite a bit more. You can tell from the, just the sort of sample that I've shown, maybe 3 or 4 different machines, but I've built a lot more. And look, I accumulated a lot of knowledge, and I just thought, look, there's so many people who don't see recumbents very often, and they would have no idea. I've got my head in it all the time, and I've sort of got something, some knowledge, and I read all the old books and stuff. And so I decided to put a book out, and I self-published the one with the white cover that's in the slide. That was about 10 years ago. And then just kept on accumulating more knowledge, and I thought that there was another time, about 2 years ago, I can do it again. I can update the book, and I can make it a bit better than the first one. Maybe I could distribute it a bit better. And so I put out another version, and that's only been out about 2 months.
Well, that's just great, Steve. How interesting. I've read the book. It's it's quite a tome. It's very comprehensive. Lots of practical information, good stories. I think anyone who has any inclination towards bicycles, and especially recumbents, will get a lot out of Cycle Zoo. What is your advice to the new tinkerer, the guy who sees you today and says, I'd like to try something like that? How do you get started?
3D printing is sort of really very accessible, and I use 3D printing to make little models and also to make actual bike parts. The printer I've got is about $400 or something like that, and it can really, you really don't, you just need a room in your house.
You have a section in your book, Steve, about your shop, like, and how it, and the equipment and such. Did you want to say something about that?
Yeah. So, I've built my shed up over a fair while. You want to buy the best set of tools you can afford, but also just work on normal bikes too, because I see a few students at uni who have started on bike projects or recumbent bike projects, and they don't know their way around a normal bike. So if you've fixed about 100 normal bikes for charity or for yourself, then that's a good start to going on the way of the recumbent, because then if you then want to go off on a tangent somewhere and go, I don't want to do this, that's the way it is on a bike, but no, I'm going to do something special here, then at least you've got that experience the way it normally works, and you might have an idea how to take it to the next step.
Why do you consider recumbent bikes and trikes to be such a good platform for experimentation and development in the bike world?
The main thing is that it hasn't been done before, and that they're not so accessible. So, secondhand bikes, at least in Melbourne, that they can be very cheap if they haven't been fixed up. And there's really no challenge in building one, because there's a challenge. You can build one, but it's just a purely technical challenge. When you get to the end and you've built your standard bicycle, you've got something that you could have gone down to Kmart and bought for $200, and yours is probably worse than that, and the one you've built. And so that, you sort of go, well, what's the point? But then you go through the process with a recumbent bike, and there's still some space there to do something different and to evolve things and to move things on. And so there are rewards, and I'm still finding things that I can do that are different, and I enjoy doing them.
My next question has to do with a more specific thing of development that you talked about in the book that I was intrigued by. Maybe you can expand on this a bit. You mentioned something about in creative ways of designing and building, of using a Velomobile shell as a battery. Now, you talked about using motors and such. I was just kind of intrigued by that concept. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
What they want to do with electric aeroplanes is to have the shell of the aeroplane, which is already composite materials in some, but they want to have that as a battery storage as well. And so they want to save some of the dead weight of the battery and have it doing an extra job. And so I just talk about some of these technologies like that, and like big 3D printers, and say, look, you've got to put these into Velomobiles, make them exciting, for researchers. And the other thing is that they're really simple applications, and Velomobiles aren't going to fall out of the sky. Is it the Sun Trip, the solar rally? Anyway, there's a big rally just finished in Europe. And,
yes.
Yeah, and they combine different vehicles with solar and with electric, and have interesting outcomes. There's a wide variety of vehicles in that space already, and so yeah, it'd be good if things got shooken up a bit, and some of the most advanced materials and technologies got put into the Velomobiles.
All right, well, let's finish up with what is next for Steve Nurse.
I'm building an interesting rear suspension at the moment, and the rear fork slides into the tube of the bike. The frame is just one aluminium beam. So the rear fork slides into that, and it's got a couple of suspension elastomers. So I'm working on that, and if you click on the links on the YouTube video, you should be able to see some of that development.
That's great. And we're going to have all those links in the description below here for Steve and his book and some of the things that he's talked about. Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking time out to share your thoughts and your publications and your ideas with the Laid Back Bike Report.
Okay. Thank you, Gary.